Okay, I'm going to put a timestamp here. This is Ricky Molly, and I am doing a rehearsal for a presentation that I'm going to do in 2 days. And just last night and most of today, I was thinking about how I'm going to revamp the slides, because the last few rehearsals, talking for an hour, it should really be about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I can sit there and answer questions or have that time for people to ask questions throughout the presentation. That would be the ideal. So I revamped the slides. That's what we're going to rehearse right now. Let me go start on this activity, how to make a simple ebook. I've also did it. I like this view. It feels good to me. um, I can, the view, meaning there's slides at the end where I have reference slides that people can refer to, or I can go to, depending on how the class goes. But the actual slides themselves that I'll be using are going to be the few that you see here. So, okay, how to make a simple ebook. This is it. This is what we're going to talk about. First, a word about my own ebook. Then we're going to take a look inside an ebook, and then we're going to make our own ebook. We have an hour, so this is mostly a show and tell. But I'm hoping that this gives people the idea for how to create their own ebooks from documents or stories or essays that you have, and get it out there. Share it among your friends, among your followers, and build up your platform. I wrote an ebook in 2017. The book itself consists of a few essays that were on my blog. It's about 40, 50 posts, really short, maybe 4 to 6, 4 to 8 paragraphs each. I put it together into a book that's roughly 70 pages, and the exercise was for me to learn how to make an ePub. And that was my experience from 2017. And the book only sold 9 copies. So I'm saying if anybody here is interested to be the 10th buyer, I appreciate it. Let's take a look at what's inside an ebook. I think an ebook is a website in a box. And when I make these slides available, I hope you'll check out the website here where I got that phrase from, because it's I like it a lot. The ebook itself is a gigantic zip file, and the zip file contains HTML files, picture files, and movie files, and even fonts and JavaScript. So an ebook is a container, and it contains, for the most part, a little website. Now, we're going to crack one open in a moment, but the format of all of this here is governed. There are 2 ways to organize the contents of this zip file. Those 2 ways are ePub and Mobi Pocket or Kindle. And in fact, let me take a break here. This is a rehearsal thing. I am going to just replace this here. I'm going to go and take my tool. I'm just going to make this change right now as I'm doing the rehearsal. So hopefully I'll just remember that. I'm going to insert a, is it draw? No. Yeah, maybe insert, I want to insert a line. Here we go. And I'm just going to cross this thing out and make the line be this one. Make the weight of it be 6 point. I'll make this picture be, yeah, that. Then I'm going to duplicate that line and cover Kindle. And I'm just going to replace both of this with the text box Amazon. Because that's the point I want to make, is that there's two formats, ePub and Amazon's format. There's a lot of variations in between, but that's the essence of that's the message that I want to convey. The shape fill will be maybe this. How does that look? Oh, brother. Good thing I'm not doing this for the class. There's also no formatting, and I'm going to reverse this, center it, and I'm going to put here Amazon. And I'll duplicate it. Actually, I won't duplicate it. I'll just leave that be. Okay, so close this up. Okay, back to the presentation. The inside of the zip file, the inside of the ePub, is governed really by two file formats. ePub, which is the common standard, it is undergoing standards verification. It's on ePub version 3, and it's going through the World Wide Web Consortium process. Lots of documents in the links here that we can refer to at your own leisure. The other format, though, is Amazon. I've crossed out these two things here, Moby Pocket and Kindle. The reality is Amazon, when they got into the game in 2007 with their Kindle device, they adopted a format called the Moby Pocket, and that format was from an old device maker. I believe it was the Palm Pilot, and they used that format for their early Kindles. They converted that format, rebranded it to AZW, and put in their own version of DRM, Digital Rights Management. I'm not going to talk today about the 2D. And I just realized, okay, yeah, so we're going to be looking at ePub, but don't worry, there's all different ways to convert your book into an Amazon file. Namely, Amazon will do it for you if you send email to your Kindle, or you can use a tool like Calibre or Calibre to convert your file and then send that out to the people that you want to access that file. So that's what's inside an ebook. But let's take a look at this more closely. I have an ebook right here called Immediately Effective Instruction. If I double click this thing, it opens up my local, on my Windows machine, it opens up a local copy of the book. It opens up the book on my local machine. And this the ebook here is really what you would expect. First of all, I just want to keep up my yeah. what the ebook does is it, of course, allows you to resize this thing. It's completely reflowable. It presents a very basic table of contents, and of course, all the other ebook features that you would expect. You can control its appearance, and you can also mark it up with your own notes. That's what an ebook gives you. But let's penetrate this a little further. We know that it's a container, so in fact, it's a giant zip file. And what that means is that I could take a zip tool I have here on my Windows machine, 7-zip. I can open that thing. When I do, you can see that there's a bunch of HTML files in here. A few other files here that are governed by the ePub format. And this root directory folder structure governed by the ePub standard is the implementation of an ePub. So if you wanted to make your own ePub, you would just create your own zip file and create some HTML. Now, we're not complicated. It's actually pretty complicated to make an ePub the quote old-fashioned way, the manually assembling a directory and et cetera, et cetera. Instead, we're going to use a tool. And I propose that everybody should learn the tool Sigil, Sigil. This tool is, I'm going to open it up here. This tool is a open source ePub editor. It allows you full control. There's a lot of different features. And I just opened that document with Sigil. I'm going to get rid of this prompt here. And when I do, again, you see the individual XHTML files. And if you double click on a file, you can see a little bit of a preview here. There's also the table of contents that's shown here in the lower right. All of this, there's even a very basic search and replace. So this tool lets us examine an ePub, and you can see that there's a lot going on, but if we keep in mind that it's just a website, then it's only the content, the XHTML or HTML files that we have to worry about. So that's what's inside an ePub. It's a container that consists, that's formatted in a way that can display a bunch of our um, um, content. I will rehearsal note. I'm going to have to really practice this. I don't know, but that's um, now let's go and make our own. And that's what the rest of this presentation will demonstrate, how to make our own ePub. We will spend a good amount of time looking at HTML, but I propose that as long as you know that you will be looking at HTML, you'll just be aware that HTML is something that you'll need to. The other thing we'll have to do is write and obtain some content. This is not a class for me to teach people how to write. Like I said in the beginning, I'm hopeful that many of you, or most of you, or some of you are thinking about your own writing projects, and that that you would use this as a springboard to pursue those projects. We are not going to write content here together, but we will find some content that we can convert into an ebook. And there's places on the web where we can do that. I'll show you that in a moment. Once we have that content, we need to format that content or convert it. There's a rehearsal note here. When I did these demos of rehearsals prior, I did it where I showed WordToEPUB first, but I think what I'll do is, because I showed Sigil, I will show Sigil first and then show how to convert a Word document into an ePub. So we're going to go from hardest to easiest and see how that goes. And finally, we're going to talk about a book cover and how to make one. Although we'll take a look at that book cover early on in the context of formatting our book. So that's what we will do for the rest of the class, is just try to make an ePub. And in order to do that, as I mentioned, we will need to find some content. The content we're going to get is this cookbook. I found a cookbook on this website called Project Gutenberg. This website contains books for which the U.S. copyrights have expired. Because of that, we can use this book for whatever purpose we like, including, in this case, our practice working with ePubs. So we have this cookbook, and we can look at this online. I hope you see that there's also ePubs here that you can use, but we have also an HTML file. When you open this file, you see that this HTML file is entirely in one document, and the recipes for the recipes for this book are just scattered throughout. There's about 100 or so recipes. My wife is an indexer at a cookbook indexing company, and I show some desserts and pastries. There are some desserts and pastries for which we can see what looks like a normal ingredient listing. So this is what this is a cookbook, a public domain cookbook. What we can do to make this an ePub is just recognize that this thing that we're looking at right here is a full-fledged HTML page. And we can save this as such. We can save this as a single web page, just the HTML. I'm going to name this version 7. That's how many times I've run through this. And we can, in Sigil, create a new document, a new ePub 3, and we can bring in Maria Gentile version 7. And once we see this file in here, you can also see the preview of it. We also see that it's a very big file. It's got the whole thing, just like the website itself. There's no table of contents yet, and I point out right away, in order for us to play nice on ebook devices, one of the things we should do is we should separate this book so that it is split up across chapters. What this section is about is formatting content. We have HTML, but now we have to format it and manipulate it so that the ebook looks good to us and it performs well on ebook devices. And a single big web page that is that's got hundreds of recipes, that's not broken up into individual files, will can sometimes cause performance problems on ebook devices. It's a consideration. So how we'll approach that is when I studied this HTML file, I found that there's a break mark everywhere that there was a H2 element. So if I search for H2, I see the Italian cookbook, I see the preface, I see paste, I see part 2 and pastries, preserves, ices, and then the index. We can count how many there are. There's 9 of them. And with Sigil, we can directly add a new file just by splitting it using this button here, split at cursor. This introduces a new file with the same header information as the previous, and now this one little file contains just the index. I also notice here there's some boilerplate at the bottom of the HTML. If I go to the bottom, there's all this stuff at the bottom that talks about this document being a Project Gutenberg document. But in our ePub, we don't need this, so I can go to that and just delete all of this text. So right here, I can delete this section. One of the things that Sigil does with HTML is it will highlight the beginning or the end, depending on which one you've selected. So if I highlight a HTML element, it will find its corresponding pair. That's a little detail. The HTML that we've imported will really be HTML means that we need to XHTML means we need to include both the beginning of the element and the end of the element. So I'm going to get rid of this transcriber note here, and in fact I'm going to go and just get rid of this whole block, and there's this whole section here, the boilerplate, and I'm just going to scroll to the bottom and you can see there's the corresponding end. I just delete it. So if you don't have an ending, you're going to get a red mark like this that says that there's an issue, and you can read the detail of the issue, but I know that I just by mistake left this HTML element fragment. Now that's cleaning up this one little page. I could do that for all of the H2 that I find in the original document. Remember, now there's only there's 9 here, but if I search, there's the cookbook here and then this, and I can go and do that split. But there's a slightly faster way. I can introduce a split marker. With a split marker, which is this, and I'm going to use this shortcut. Split marker inserts a piece of text that Sigil will split on all at once, meaning Sigil will look for these markers and split the file at this location. So I'm going to find all the H2s, and I'm going to insert this marker here. I'm going to use that shortcut. I'll find the next H2, and these two H2s are next to each other. Not sure why, but I will skip over that and put a split marker here, and ISIS. Yeah. Then, now that I put all these split markers in, I can then split it all at once. I say yes. Um, I, when I did this rehearsal note, I'm gonna go and do the split maybe a different way. Maybe I'll split the top part first, but it's just complaining about the links, which we're not going to worry about. Now, these are split up into lots of smaller files, and in fact, this file here contains also some boilerplate. So we're going to get rid of that boilerplate while I'm thinking of it. Get rid of that right here, and yeah, and so that's the work of formatting an ebook. I think one thing we can do now is tackle the table of contents. The table of contents, if I click on generate table of contents, Sigil detects in the HTML all of the header tags. Now, one thing I noticed is that there's no H1 tag in here, which is fine. But you can see that there's all these other ones, 3 and 4, that denote in this case markup. It denotes that they wanted the text to appear a certain way. This is not necessarily part of the structure. What we could do is we could just select up to level 1. Actually, there's no level 1. We're going to select up to level 2, and you can see that there's all of it's just these, and then we can get rid of the pastry one. Rather, part 2. We can then also click on this, all the ones that I haven't selected, and then I could conceivably click on all of these that have the all capitals, which really denote the recipes themselves. So put those in my table of contents. I'm not going to go through all of this. That would be laborious. There's about 100. Still picking a few items. I'm also mindful to pick some from the right sections, different sections, so that'll make the table of contents look a certain way. I'm going to say OK at this point. When I do that, the table of contents here will update, and you'll see the natural nesting between all of the header elements. H2 go inside of H4 goes inside of H3 elements, and H3 elements go inside of H2 elements, and H2 elements go inside of H1, and that's the natural order of a table of contents. Now, I am now at the 30-minute mark for my rehearsal. Checking my broadcast. The ePub that we're working on is, I think, shaping up. What I'm going to present now is talk a little bit about this cover that now in the ebook that I made. There's a cover here, and that's a cover that I created following the instructions from this website here. Do-it-yourself book covers, DIY book covers. This is by a gentleman named Derek Murphy. He's a prolific self-publisher. He publishes his own, I think, fantasy and young adult books. But he also spends a lot of time talking about self-publishing and book design. When I was looking around for how to make a cover, his YouTube is one that I looked at and really was excited by because you didn't need to use Photoshop. You can do all of the same work inside of Microsoft Word. So to make an ebook cover in Microsoft Word, we first need to start with a nice cover, um, a nice picture. And to do that, I go to Flickr. Flickr is a photo website. There's plenty others, of course, but Flickr lets me search based on what rights the photographer has decided to preserve. It allows this particular image, we can share and adapt it and build upon it, but we need to attribute the photographer. And so this is one consideration when making a cover. You'll need to find some good cover art. And there's some lots of exciting new discussion about that because there's now artificial intelligence generating art, and book covers are they're probably not too far away. To generate a book cover with that nice picture in Microsoft Word, I first set up the document. The layout of the document should just get rid of the margins. Uh, Now the paragraph goes there. When I bring in the picture, it will appear um, like this, but we can then stretch this thing out so that it fills up the entire cover. Now, I'm not going to, I will, I must advise that the has a bit more detail on the cover, namely the size that the cover should be, namely how you should take a photograph of this, etc. But this, yeah, I'm going to also, yeah, now that you have the cover rehearsal note, you got to understand, rehearsal note, go to Derek's website and his YouTube to get the full details. Setting the margin and the size of the document is important to make the book cover compatible for places like Amazon or even just your own regular book. Now I'm going to position the text, so I'm going to position the the document, the the image, so that it is behind the text. That's important because when we add the text, which we're going to do with a text box, I'm going to put here the Italian cookbook. We can, I will first crank up the font, maybe do it that way. Actually, that doesn't quite work that way. I'm also going to get rid of the paragraph view. I can then style this picture a little bit. I can make the font be like this. Maybe I'll get rid of the fill, and I'll also get rid of that little black border, which we won't need. Click on this, the outline. No outline. Now we have the Italian cookbook, and the rest of the procedure by Derek is you just take a photograph of this, and there's specifics again based on the final end result of where your ebook is going to be. But that's what creating a cover is about. I've already created a cover. In order to get that cover inside of my container inside of the ePub, I first need to add an existing file, and I have this cover already created. ePub, this is one I made a few days ago. When I add it into my container, into my ePub, it gets placed into the right location. Once it's in the right location, I can then add it as a cover. It lets me pick which file I want, and I can say OK, and it makes a cover page. I'm going to point out that this file here is empty, so I can even get rid of this thing. And I think this is a good ebook that we can even start to view it. To do that, though, before we get started viewing it, let's add the last touch, which is the metadata. Metadata is things like the copyright, the author, ISBN number, publishing name, etc., etc. But I'm just going to put here the Italian cookbook, and I'm going to add in the author, Maria Gentile. Now, the book is saved as an ePub, so as soon as I save it in version 7, and when I save it, I can then look at it. How do I do that? I come into my reader, and click on this to add my book. I'm going to open it. When I do, I'll see the cover, and when I double click on it, I see this blank page, but that's something I have to work on. If I page, I will then see the rest of the content. I already see some issues with these page numbers here, but that's a result of copying the HTML directly. And we of course can go back into Sigil and clean up those entries. If I were to go to, I think, this page, if I search for PG7, I can see this, and I can of course delete this span. For example, there's the table of contents that we made with some of the selection, not all, but you would again go into the table of contents and add or generate or select rather a few more H4 in there. One of the things that's good about a tool like Sigil is that you do have the full control over all of the content that's inside of your ePub. Everything from every single HTML element all the way to including your own style sheet. When you get more advanced, you will probably want to create a style that you can use across all the pages, and you would do that using a style sheet. There's things like adding links. There's links here in the index, and these links here, although they point to things locally, actually I just realized, yeah, these do look like they're correct. So if I were to click on 146, yeah, this does take me to this item. So you can edit the links though, and if I click on, I think it's this that I need to look at all the different links. I thought it was something like here or here, but so that's the ebook formatting process. As you watch me do that, you might be curious. Well, that's cool. That's a lot of technical work depending on your technical expertise, HTML and CSS, and working with a tool that looks a little, it's got a lot of buttons on it. If this feels technical, the other approach to making an ebook, and there's a terrific tool to do that. Macintoshes, MacBooks, etc. There's all sorts of conversion tools for the Mac that can convert a document from a word processor into an ePub. And in fact, Apple's own Pages, Apple Pages, which is their word processor, can generate an ePub file. Once you generate that ePub file, you can then fine-tune it inside of a tool like Sigil. But even though I'm showing a Windows-based tool, I do want to advise there's plenty of tooling for the Mac to convert a file, a Word document, a word processor document into ePub. But I'm going to demonstrate WordToEPUB. When I installed this tool, it installed into my document, it installed into Microsoft Word this button here, WordToEPUB. And so what that means is we can create a new document and just copy the entire Maria Gentile book into Microsoft Word. And I can go and get things like the because it's in a word processor, it can do summation of the number of words, the number of pages, etc. I can then convert this into a Word document. I mean, an ePub. So first I have to save the file. I'm going to save it as in my downloads. I'm just going to save this as well, I've already forgotten my little convention here. Yeah, TICB. I'm going to say TICB V7 WordToEPUB. I'm just making that up. Once I save the file, though, if I click on WordToEPUB, it will convert this file and put it into the same directory. So I'm going to say OK, and it will do all sorts of it'll do the conversion. So rather than deal with things at a very detailed level like you are in Sigil, it is going to convert this as best it could. So it finished it. It made some notes about my header levels, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But if I open this file inside of my tool, I get my ePub. Now, the formatting, while we don't see any of those stray page numbers, Microsoft Word and the conversion process got rid of it, there's still some things that we have to contend with, namely the table of contents. When I click on it, it is pretty deep. It found all of the different headers that are available inside of here, and it attempted to make a table of contents following all of these headers. So it's a little, as an ebook, it's a little cumbersome, although it is very thorough. And but aside from that, there's no cover. So this way of making an ePub is of course perfectly acceptable. I'm going to show how to add a cover in a moment. But if you are going to commit to doing that's an advertisement, by the way. I'm looking at this thinking, what's happening here? Um, it, if you're going to do it this way with a Word to ePub converter tool, be prepared to either open that ePub inside of Sigil to fine tune it, or consider spending a little bit more time with your document and and style it properly inside of Word. What that means is I'll first delete this. By the way, it made a image of my first page and generated a cover for that. That's what the cover is here. I'm just going to remove this. I'm also going to exit this. What that means is if I close this, this Word document is formatted already using a whole bunch of styles here on the, if I open the styles, there are all these styles that are being used. But when I click on the individual elements, they are not styled. Everything is styled normally with the normal style. So there's a guide. There's actually a handful of guides for this, but there's a guide here that talks about the headers and how you should make use of the standard Word headers. All of this information is saying that we should go into Word and spruce up our document. Maybe what we could do is, and I've seen this in blogs, we just have to go in here and just get rid of all the styling. We clear out all the formatting, and then we go into each section that we want a header and just add these headings. So this is a header. We'll actually use the correct thing. We'll use this title. We'll make this be, I don't know, we'll make this be, we'll make this be an H1. No, let's make it H. What we're doing here, we're inside of Microsoft Word and we're adding styles where it makes sense. Here I'm going to make that H3. And when Word to Convert is processed, if I click on it, I'll have to save it first. If we were to convert it again, it will look at these styles and do the right thing, making a table of contents, etc. So now we didn't do it for everything, but I did spend time doing this myself. I had a new file here, TC, the Italian cookbook formatted, and here I've made this. If I click on it, I've made this soup of Cappelletti. I made that be a heading 3. All of that lives under the preface, which is heading 2. And at the very end, I took that cover and I put it at the end of the document. What that enables me to do is I can go to Word to ePub, and using its advanced feature, the advanced mode, I can then update things like the meta, and I'm going to put here version 7. Yeah. And I can update things like the cover. Here I will select an image from the document. And things like the heading and the styles. There's all sorts of basic controls to advise the converter how to properly update this document. Well, I'm going to go and generate this PCB format of V7. I do that. Yeah, no warnings. So now I go to downloads, I have a new file here formatted V7. If I double click this and open it up in my reader, I'll get to see here the new the Italian cookbook. There's a nice cover for it now, and if I click on if I do page through, it it's starting to act like a real ebook. There's also a very basic table of contents where I went through the trouble of selecting all of the recipes so you could see that what it would look like. Well, hopefully you now have a taste and a feel for how to make your own EPUB. Even a simple EPUB will require either a good amount of formatting and or a good amount of converting, depending on if you're going directly into HTML and editing with Sigil, or you're doing the formatting inside of your word processor and then working with the correct tools to convert that properly into an EPUB. There's all different ways you can mix and match these things, of course, and because Sigil can operate on an existing EPUB, you can generate the EPUB using WordToEPUB and then edit the result inside of Sigil. Lots of different ways you can manipulate the book. I earlier rehearsal note. I'm going to try to get this anecdote in earlier, but I've been involved in it. I've been involved in publications in my school years. I've always loved the idea of publishers, and then when the Kindles came out and Kindle Direct Publishing came out, I was really enamored with the idea of self-publishing. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It's crazy. You can just be a book that is for sale on Amazon. Now I just need to pair up with somebody who knows how to do marketing. But the work of making an ebook is considered in the publishing world the production side, the layout, the picking a good cover, finding a designer for that. These things are part of the production of a book. And the editorial side, creating the words, putting together the story, working with an editor, spell checking, grammar checking, all that is the editorial side. So there's editorial and production. And what's exciting to me, but also probably possibly challenging, is that as a self-publisher, you'll need to do all of these things. But of course, you can hire out some of this work. You can find somebody who can do a nice cover for you on the internet. Just search for something, and you can probably find editors that will take a look at your book. Again, you are going to will need to compensate them, but that the point of this is self-publishing demands at the very least knowledge of all these phases and embracing the work that 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 you need to do to get a book out. So that's the presentation. It's 56 minutes, but I did fumble around. There were some things there that were a little strange, but I think I'm good. I feel good about this new organization. Uh, Rehearse it one more time tomorrow. Probably look at the files again, and yeah, just keep on going.